Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Wednesday. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's get straight into today's stories. Let's start off talking about WWE Superstar Ricochet, because Ricochet could be set to leave the WWE very soon. Now, there is fresh speculation that links underused WWE Superstar Ricochet with a move away from the company, as the Wrestling Observer / Figure 4 Online's Brian Alvarez has stated that he believes that Ricochet is yet to sign a new WWE contract. Now, Alvarez noted this belief on the latest episode of Wrestling Observer Live on the Wrestling Observer radio show. Now, of course, Ricochet signed for WWE back in January of 2018. He and fellow newcomers at the time, Candice LeRae, Eric, and Ivar, signed 3-year deals with the company, meaning that if the former Lucha Underground main eventer hasn't agreed a contract extension between now and then, he may depart WWE later this month. Now, this isn't the first time, of course, that Ricochet has been linked with a WWE departure, as the former New Japan junior heavyweight champion denied the talk that he was out of the way of WWE when his name was linked to a September report last year stating that a certain WWE talent had opted against re-signing with the company. Though that was a report by WrestleVotes at the time. They didn't mention Ricochet by name, but around September last year there were numerous reports that came out that did state that a certain, not major, but certain WWE superstar had decided and pretty much made their decision right there and then they weren't going to re-sign with WWE. Once their contract expired, they were gone. Now, Ricochet came out at the time and said, well, I know some people say that's me, that's not me, but this is pro wrestling, guys. Wrestlers lie, lots of people do. So when it comes to Ricochet, look, if he did decide to leave, Ricochet is regarded as one of WWE's most criminally misused talents. You have to look at the year that Ricochet had last year, and it's one of the biggest fall from graces, as it were, in terms of the WWE pecking order that we've really seen. At the start of the year, he's involved in a program with Brock Lesnar, so much so that he was actually part of Brock Lesnar being eliminated from the Royal Rumble by Drew McIntyre in January of last year. He then moves on to face Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship at Super Showdown in February. Big deal, you would think, a massive opportunity, a massive spot for Ricochet at the time. What happens? He is absolutely destroyed by Brock Lesnar in under 2 minutes at that Super Showdown event in February. And after that, he's really had no momentum whatsoever. At the moment, he's in a one-sided losing feud against Retribution. He loses pretty much every single week. And I think back to when Ricochet was on Raw Talk a couple of weeks ago, months ago, it's difficult to tell at this point. But he was essentially saying, look, I came up to the main roster. I was tagging with Aleister Black. I did well there. But then I became the United States champion. Things were going well, but I could only hold that for a couple of months at best, or a couple of weeks. Then I lost it. Then I lost to Brock Lesnar. Then I was teaming with Cedric Alexander, and then he turned on me, and now I'm losing to Retribution all the time. It just feels like it's constantly lose, and lose. Now, when it comes to Ricochet, it's very obvious that he is misused. Obviously, the man is extraordinarily talented when it comes to the ring. I don't think Ricochet's perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I think there are parts of his game he does need to work on. I do think he really needs to improve his promos. Now, I understand the opposite side of the argument when it comes to Ricochet, that people might say, well, you can only say what's scripted for you, and that's true, especially on the main roster. A lot of the time, you have to recall and you have to recite what's written for you verbatim. That is what happens quite a lot of the time. So I do cut him some slack there, but other superstars have made it work when it comes to those promos, and Ricochet just hasn't. I think his promos do need a lot of work, but there are ways around all of that because the guy is so talented in the ring. Do what they did with him in NXT. Limit those promos and just have him have great matches, have him do high-flying spots. Everyone to this day still talks about the spot where he did the flip outside of the ring to confront the Velveteen Dream. He was a very red-hot talent in NXT, and lots of people were saying after him being North American champion that when he goes to the main roster, Vince McMahon's going to love the look of him, the high-flying style. He really was this sort of action figure come to life. He could do crazy things like in a video game. He would fit perfectly in with the PG WWE product because he suits that down to a T. And it's almost been surprising, frankly, how misused he has been. Now, I mentioned before, the promos I think are an issue when it comes to Ricochet. I think there's no doubt about that. But just the way that I mean, he's really been misused, and I can't really put my finger on why. The only thing I can say is probably the promos, but even that, it's not good enough. This was a guy that, I mean, coming through the door, he was screwed, frankly, when it comes to the main roster, because the first gimmick he had was the real-life superhero come to life. To me, honestly, they were more heel promos than babyface promos. They were so cheesy, so annoying, so, oh, I'm here to prove that dreams can come true, and if you put your mind to it, you can really do anything. I mean, it was almost comical. It was almost comical in the sense that it was so cheesy. It was so, believe in your dreams, and kids, you can do anything. I'm here to prove that superheroes are real, and just believe in yourself and all that kind of. It was like Bo Dallas. It was like Bo Dallas, but meant to be serious. I mean, it was laughable. So maybe that's why he failed. And sometimes you hear these stories of Vince McMahon. He has this image of you, this gimmick, this character he wants you to do. And for whatever reason, it doesn't work, and then he gets so frustrated and so down. I can't believe he didn't make that work. Well, he can't do anything then, and he just throws you to the side. And it feels like there is something definitely when it comes to Ricochet that either Vince McMahon or Bruce Pritchard, they don't like, they don't see. And it can't be what he does in the ring, because what he does in the ring is excellent. Is it the promos? Maybe. Is it the character? I don't know. And I think, frankly, at this point, when it comes to Ricochet, I know lots of people have had bad starts to their WWE run, and eventually they turn it around. But Ricochet, to me, at this point, he just needs to go. He just needs to go. And I don't want to be one of those people that says, go to AEW and your career will be rejuvenated. You'll become this big superstar, this massive talent once again. But this is a guy in Ricochet that spent his time getting to WWE in the first place because he was such a hot commodity on the indie scene. And I think there was concern on his part of, is it going to be worth my while going to WWE creatively? Am I going to be satisfied? Am I going to have this momentum that I've got right now in the indie scene? And he doesn't. He doesn't. I think everyone knows the potential and talent that he has, but he doesn't have the momentum. He doesn't have the allure that he had when he first came into WWE from the independent scene. He just doesn't. So, again, I don't want to be one of those people that says go to AEW and you'll be a star, but I think it's best suited that he leaves WWE at this point. He just needs to get a break. He just needs to restart, start over again, prove what he can do, maybe wrestle with a chip on his shoulder. And I think just a different presentation and a different environment at this point is needed for him. Is that AEW? I don't know. Is that Impact Wrestling? Is that just working the indie scene once it's back up and running? Is that going back to New Japan? Who knows at this point? Who knows? But I just think at this point he needs a break. And I would suggest when it comes to like an AEW, that is certainly a style that's more conducive of what he's used to doing or what he's best known for. He's known for the high flying, jumping out of the ring, the high spots. That is very AEW centric, for better or for worse. I know people do and don't like that, but maybe it's best for him to leave WWE at this point. So of course we'll find out soon. If his contract is set to expire soon, I'm sure we'll find out very, very soon, the latest when it comes to Ricochet. Let's talk about the Raw ratings because, of course, as always, the Raw ratings were revealed last night. And Monday's live WWE Raw episode featuring Triple H's return to the ring in the main event against Randy Orton drew an average of 1.819 million live viewers on the USA Network. This is according to Showbuzz Daily. Now, this number is down 14.5% from last week's 2.128 million live viewers for the Legends Night special, which of course was the best Raw viewership since March 16, 2020. Now, for this week's show, the first hour drew 2.024 million live viewers. Last week's was 2.197. The second hour drew 1.802 million live viewers. Last week's hour 2 was 2.150. And the final hour drew 1.632 million viewers. Last week's hour 3 was 2.036. So we're back to what we were at before, essentially, especially when it comes to that massive dying third hour drop off there. Now, this week's Raw, as I mentioned, was down from last week's Legends Night special, but actually up from what the show had been doing previously. So there's different ways to look at it. You could say they're still riding the effect of it being 2021, the first few shows of the year. We're heading into Royal Rumble season, which is the start of WrestleMania season. Obviously, there is also a bit of fallout from Legends Night. There might have been a bit of buzz, especially considering the way that Raw went off the air last week when it comes to Goldberg returning to WWE television. Also, as well, there was the stuff on social media prior to the show going on the air about Drew McIntyre's COVID diagnosis and the return of Triple H. That probably factored into it as well. But another thing you do have to look at is that this week's viewership is still down 10.4% from the same week in 2020. So the trajectory is still the same. We are still going down like that year on year on year, 10% from last year. And that will be the case regardless of the pandemic. That will be the case regardless of talent. That will be the case regardless of it's a 3-hour show or not. That is the way that television is going, and that has been the trajectory of Monday Night Raw for years, 20 years at this point, or 21 years at this point. It's been going down like that year on year. That's just what it is. Now, in terms of the whole cable system as a whole, the cable news programs once again dominated the night on cable on Monday, along with, of course, the college football championship game. Raw tied number 5 for the night on the cable top 150 with an average of 18 to 49 demographic rating of 0.55, down 19% from last week's number 1 ranked 0.68. Now, as I mentioned, the college football championship game between Alabama and Ohio State dominated the night in viewership, and the 18 to 49 demographic on cable for the night. Now, it's not a horrific number when it comes to Monday Night Raw, considering what they were doing previously. 1.819, considering the competition they had against the college championship football game, considering the competition of the cable news networks, which everyone's tuning into them at the moment for a variety of reasons, of course. I think WWE probably will be happy with that number, especially considering the chaos that surrounded that show, with Drew McIntyre going down, with other people possibly testing positive or being exposed to positive tests, the chaos of rewriting that show at the last minute, especially considering the record low as well in December of last year. I think WWE will take that. It still doesn't mean they fixed any problems. They still have massive problems when it comes to Monday Night Raw. If you watch that show for 3 hours on Monday, good for you, because again, at points, because it's always the case, it was a very tough watch. It's a 3-hour show. At points, it's very boring. We have a million recaps during the show. There were high points, but there were certainly a lot of low points. It's a really tough watch. It's not like watching SmackDown, where it goes very quickly and the bad parts are very small and the good parts are very big. That isn't the case with Monday Night Raw. It's a slog every week to watch. It's difficult. Raw is still bore. So they'll take 1.8 million viewers for an average, live viewers. Obviously, it'll be more when you factor in DVRs, on demand, all that kind of stuff. Because, again, ratings, they still are important, but they don't tell the whole picture. They'll take that. They'll take that, WWE. I think the biggest issue, again, will be that if you look at last year, we're down 10% from where they were last year. That's the issue. And it's not going to be fixed. It's not going to be fixed unless you can trot those legends out every single week, which is not going to happen. They've got massive issues when it comes to Raw, and they're still yet to fix them. Let's move on and look at a little bit of social media drama, a little bit of social media beef that got pretty personal pretty quickly between WWE's T-Bar, Dominik Dijakovic, and AEW Sammy Guevara, because T-Bar has said that Sammy Guevara stole his finisher, but Sammy Guevara has since responded, and it's kind of all blown up on social media. Now, Retribution member T-Bar took to Twitter to call out AEW wrestler Sammy Guevara. He believes that Guevara stole his finisher, the Feast Your Eyes. Now, while T-Bar didn't actually mention the name of who it was in the tweet, several comments from fans revealed that it was indeed Sammy Guevara. Now, almost an hour later after posting the tweet, Sammy Guevara responded to T-Bar's message, confirming that T-Bar was indeed talking about him. In his post, T-Bar referred to Sammy Guevara as, quote, some little teenage virgin on AEW. His full tweet was the following, quote, some little teenage virgin on AEW stole my finisher like 4 years ago after we did a show together. I'd steal something from his moveset, but it's all just Ricochet moves, end quote. Now, Sammy Guevara responded to T-Bar that the rest of the move actually belongs to Matt DeMorris. Guevara tweeted, quote, someone tell Teabag the move actually belongs to Matt DeMorris, the guy he stole it from, and I'm just trying to get the move to be seen since, you know, he's never on TV. Also, while you're sitting doing nothing in catering on Monday, check out the newest vlog. Now, AEW star and former WWE superstar Dax Harwood also got into the conversation by replying to Sammy's tweet. He said, quote, stole my finisher. The guy is an idiot. He's lucky to even be in the business. Now, this got personal very quickly here. You would think maybe it's just a bit of social media beef. T-Bar is very strong in his social media game, but it got very personal very quickly. The argument now turned back to the past controversial remarks that Sammy Guevara once made about WWE superstar Sasha Banks. T-Bar tweeted that Sammy Guevara should try to be creative instead of making jokes about you know what. You can go and check those remarks out, they're not gone. Now, T-Bar has since deleted the tweet and wrote that he's going to delete all of his contributions to the argument because it's dumb. His full tweet was, someone tell Panda Kid I had a singles match on TV last night and I didn't steal the move from some backyarder. I thought of it in a professional wrestling ring with another wrestler. Try to be creative sometime instead of, oh, I don't know, making jokes about, it's a four-letter word that begins with R and ends in E. So he then tweeted, you know what, everyone is right, this is a dumb argument and I'm deleting my contributions to it. Now, we'll touch on that in a second, but also because this carries on, I mean, it really did explode. T-Bar then responded to Dax Harwood, calling him an idiot. Again, this is how crazy it is. T-Bar wrote, I could never understand what your problem was with me. I was always polite to you, complimented your matches. I think you hated my style. So weird. Hope all is well. You usually seem like a nice enough dude. Harwood never responded to T-Bar, or at least hasn't at the time of recording here. Now, I don't... This really was odd. This really was odd. And I understand, I think, where he was going with it from the start, T-Bar. I think he was trying to be what T-Bar has been doing on social media, and that's getting people's attention, maybe doing things and saying things on social media that other people weren't. But like a lot of people, once they start playing this social media game, they have the line here and they step right over it. And I don't have a problem. I don't think anyone had a problem with T-Bar calling out Sammy Guevara and talking about stealing the move, and then Sammy Guevara responding and Dax Harwood getting involved. That's social media online squabbling and beef, and frankly, it gets people talking and people like it. That's not a problem. What is a problem is when T-Bar is then involving Sammy Guevara's past comments about Sasha Banks. Now, those past comments that Sammy Guevara made about Sasha Banks, regardless of when they were, we did a video talking about it here on the channel. I don't care if it was in 2016, before he was with AEW, whatever. They were still disgusting. It doesn't matter. They were still disgusting. Sammy Guevara got suspended for them for a couple of months, and he had his salary was donated to, I think, a local women's shelter in Jacksonville, Florida as well. I thought AEW handled it relatively well. Possibly maybe should have been suspended longer. Nevertheless, his comments were abhorrent and they were awful. And I don't think it's something that should be joked about. I don't think it's something that, look, Sammy Guevara did it, and he had to pay his punishment for it, and he has. It doesn't make it excusable. That doesn't mean you can't bring it up ever again. I don't know if that subject in general should be joked about, and that's what it kind of felt like. It kind of felt like T-Bar was trying to use it as a put down, as a funny, oh, got you put down, but it's not really that subject to be joked about, if that makes sense. And I think he realised that very quickly, because when he said, oh, you know what, everyone is right, this dumb conversation, it's a dumb argument, and I'm deleting my contributions to it, I think either someone has said to him, look, delete that, because that's going to get you in trouble, especially from the office, and it's just not a good look. Or himself, he's realised, you know what, I probably stepped too far then. I probably went a bit over the mark, well, quite a lot over the mark, frankly, and it's not worth it for some weird social media online beef to try and get yourself over on Twitter. So I think that was probably the case there, but I don't know if there'll be any blowback. I doubt it. Probably might just be a case of WWE say to him, look, we like what you do on social media. We like the fact that you're outspoken, and we like that you get people talking, and it gets people talking about you and Retribution and the gimmick. We like it, right? That's the whole point of Retribution, is that they don't care. They're outside the boundaries of WWE. That's fine. But you have to know your limits still, and you can't joke about stuff like that. So I think that's probably the case there. Now, talking about WWE, let's talk about this recent COVID outbreak, because by all accounts there has been this COVID outbreak affecting not just only WWE but also AEW and Impact Wrestling. Now, of course, Monday, WWE announced that WWE Champion Drew McIntyre tested positive for COVID-19, and McIntyre later on Raw addressed the fans and assured that he would still wrestle Goldberg at the Royal Rumble. It was reported after WWE's announcement, as I mentioned, that WWE, AEW and Impact Wrestling are affected by this latest COVID outbreak. Now, on yesterday's edition of the Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer confirmed 3 more positive cases of people that have or have just recovered from COVID. Now, this would make a total of 4 positive COVID-19 cases in WWE thus far, including McIntyre. Meltzer said that one of the people that had tested positive was on SmackDown, and it was a talent that was scheduled to be on the show but has now been taken off. There was one case involving, quote, a big star that has now returned after testing positive that has gone through quarantine, and there is one case in NXT. Now, Meltzer also noted that there may be more absences mainly to contact tracing and therefore quarantining. In regards to McIntyre, the belief is that he tested positively shortly before this week's episode of Raw, most likely the day before on Sunday. as all talent and personnel are required to test before the show. The belief also is that it's unlikely that people, Hulk Hogan, of course 67 years old, Jimmy Hart, of course 78 years old, and Bill Goldberg, 54 years old, are in immediate danger of contracting the virus, while McIntyre stated that he has no symptoms. Meltzer said that he had mild symptoms. So Meltzer's kind of contradicting what Drew McIntyre is saying. McIntyre saying, no, I don't have any. Meltzer's saying that he does. It doesn't matter really, frankly. What really matters is that he recovers, and that once he's back, he's got rid of the virus and he tests negative over and over and over again, and hopefully he gets through this. If he does have mild symptoms or no symptoms, what's important is that he recovers, he's safe, he's healthy. When it comes to this latest news that more people are testing positive or more people are going to have to quarantine because of contact tracing, it's like I said with the Drew McIntyre video that we did earlier this week. Unfortunately, regardless of the precautions that you have in place, regardless of the safety procedures, whether they are regular testing, whether they are social distancing, mask wearing, hand sanitizing, regardless of all of that, you are still putting on a show during a pandemic. You're going to get these positive tests. Now, it doesn't make it right. There have to be these procedures in place, and I think WWE, in fairness, especially once they move to the Thunderdome, they do have good procedures in place. That's what this testing policy is for, to catch it and make sure we don't have this wild spread. Now, we are seeing spikes in the UK and around the world, especially coming out of the holiday season, because of course people got together with their families maybe when they shouldn't have. So that's led to this big spike, and we spoke about yesterday, WWE actually expected there to be more people that tested positive coming out of the holiday season. So when it comes to people wanting to know the names as well, Dave Mounts has mentioned names from SmackDown and NXT there, etc., and big stars. You can't just demand to know. You can't. We've been through this. Ultimately, it's someone's prerogative, it's someone's choice if they want to reveal that they've tested positive. Otherwise, it's a private medical condition. Nobody needs to know anyone's medical history or their medical issues or anything of the sort, because it's private, it's confidential. That's the point. That's the point of confidential private medical records. That's how it works. So Dave Meltzer can't come out and say, oh, it's this person, this person, this person. You can't criticize him and say, oh, he's purposely being vague. Well, he has to. He doesn't want to break someone's medical records or anything like that. It's ridiculous. And there's no need to know any of it, really. All that we need to know is that there is an outbreak. That's what the situation is right now. And I think the worry, justifiably so, was that Drew McIntyre tests positive, but you've also got the likes of Hulk Hogan, Jimmy Hart, and other legends that were backstage last week at Raw Legends Nights. Now, obviously, they had the testing before, and I would assume after as well. If I'm Hulk Hogan, I'm Jimmy Hart, and I'm Goldberg, or anyone else for that nature, of a legend that I thought I was a bit vulnerable coming out of that show, you would quarantine, you would get yourself tested, and you would do all of the necessary steps. So hopefully they'll all be fine, and hopefully this outbreak can get under control shortly. But I think, in fairness to WWE, they are doing the right thing of how they're handling it. Now, talking of Monday Night Raw, this week rather, we had the spot with Keith Lee, right, when the top rope broke on Monday Night Raw. Now, the top rope breaking on this week's edition of Monday Night Raw, by all accounts, actually was a planned spot. Now, for those who missed it, the top rope was broken during the tag team match that saw Keith Lee and Sheamus defeat John Morrison and The Miz. The spot came when Lee sent Morrison flying into the corner with a pounce. Raw then went to commercial and came back to a ring crew member finishing up the repair job. Now, it was reported on the Wrestling Observer radio show that the top rope break was done, so they had a way to take the show to a commercial break. WWE has had this mentality that they want to do something spectacular right before commercial breaks as a way to keep the viewer tuned in, and this spot was related to that. So there you go. I didn't think that was the case. Yesterday when we spoke about the Keith Lee top rope breaking spot, I felt that it was legitimate. We have seen it in the past. We've seen it in all of pro wrestling in the past, not just WWE. Considering the power of Keith Lee and the surprise nature that he had, I felt that was the case, and I felt that the reason they went to commercial was because the top rope broke and they could fix it within the time they were on commercial. By all accounts, it was a planned spot. I credit WWE. You have to credit WWE. It was an innovative spot. It certainly got people talking. The fact we're still talking about it a couple of days afterwards, we're talking about this specific spot, it worked. I don't know if it worked in terms of hooking the viewer in. I would assume so. With people watching live, certainly I was like, well, I wonder what happened here. I wonder what happens when they come back. It's not a spot you can do every week. Certainly not. And I certainly won't expect to see it for probably like a year or so now, maybe even longer than that. But, you know, it's an innovative spot. It's a creative spot. Credit to WWE. and it gets over this Keith Lee absolute monster powerhouse character. I didn't have a problem with it at all. So the fact that it was a planned spot, if anything, I probably like it more. I did like or hope the fact that it wasn't a planned spot, because it did make Raw feel more raw in the sense of the name, that it is live, anything can happen. It feels more live when you see mistakes, instead of seeing this completely smooth show, as it were. That's what's good about AEW, is that it's not perfect when it's live, and it makes it do feel like anything can happen, and it is live and it is raw. But it was a planned spot, so I mean, credit to WWE. I thought they made it look very, very good. Speaking of Raw, we have an update when it comes to Ric Flair's status, because it looks like WWE Hall of Famer Ric Flair is back as a regular character on WWE television once again. Now, as noted, this week's edition of Raw saw the Nature Boy help Lacey Evans defeat his daughter, one half of the WWE Women's Tag Team Champion Charlotte Flair, in singles action, and this time he wasn't shy about it. Flair then celebrated with Evans as they left together. The angle came after Flair helped Evans pin Charlotte Flair in a non-title tag team match last week, but acted like it was an accident. In an update, word is now that Flair is back on WWE TV as a full-time performer. This is according, once again, to the Wrestling Observer radio show. Now, there is no word on how long this Ric Flair run will last, or where WWE is going with this storyline, but Flair is back for the time being. So, this one's interesting, isn't it? We spoke about yesterday. I still think it's the case. This is Al Wilson and Dawn Marie revisited in 2021. I think Ric Flair and Lacey Evans, WWE loves a wedding. WWE loves a wedding, because weddings still in this day draw ratings. The Bobby Lashley-Lana wedding that they did, when was that? Was that 2019? At the end of 2019? I think it did, 2.5 million live viewers? Could you imagine if Raw did that now? They'd be screaming from the rooftops about how amazing it is, and Raw's been fixed. That was a bad wedding with Bobby Lashley and Lana. So who knows if they did another one of Ric Flair and Lacey Evans? Could you imagine? I think part of the reason people tuned in to the Bobby Lashley and Lana wedding way back when was because it was such a car crash, and it was so chaotic, and it was so ridiculous and over the top, and people were tuning in out of morbid curiosity. It was the accident on the side of the road principle of people going, I can't help but look. So I think that might be the case when it comes to Ric Flair and Lacey Evans. Now, I don't know if they are going to get married, but I'm still looking at this as an Al Wilson versus an Al Wilson and Dawn Marie storyline in 2021, where Charlotte Flair is going to get a new stepmother, that being Lacey Evans. I do think, though, the real crime out of all of this, where's Asuka? Where's the Raw Women's Championship involved? Charlotte Flair has come back and dominated Raw to the point of the Raw Women's Championship doesn't matter anymore. I mean, Asuka, when was the last time she defended the Raw Women's Championship? Was it September? October? I don't know. So that is a concern for me, but looks like the Nature Boy is going to be back for the foreseeable future. His runs recently when it comes to WWE TV haven't been very long. They've lasted 6-7 weeks or something like that, so that might be the case there. But don't tell me, you cannot tell me, this isn't Al Wilson and Dawn Marie, and you can't tell me that WWE aren't looking at this going, look, weddings draw ratings, we need ratings, we're desperate, Ric Flair's a draw, weddings are a draw. We've got this storyline. It's so crazy and it's so over the top and it's so soap opera. Book it. So I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest, if we have a Ric Flair and Lacey Evans wedding angle. Just saying, if it is the case, you can clip this. It was here first. I guessed it first. Didn't report it. Nothing here's a report. I'm not one of those people. But nevertheless, it's certainly going to be interesting as to what happens with that going forward. We have some news when it comes to the Royal Rumble, specifically new details on why WWE will not have fans at the Royal Rumble event this year. Now, a new report indicates that WWE's rationale for not having fans at the Royal Rumble is actually due to logistics issues and not because of anything related to the current ongoing pandemic. Now, it was reported back on January 7 via WrestleVotes on Twitter that WWE does not have plans to include fans in attendance at the upcoming Royal Rumble pay-per-view. Now, in an update, WrestleVotes are now reporting that WWE feels like the stress, manpower, and complete undertaking of removing the WWE Thunderdome setup for one night is just too much work to make everything happen. This is very interesting, isn't it? Because it has been widely reported in 2020 and for the last few months that WWE's big plan, their big goal, was to have fans, physical fans, back in the building for the Royal Rumble pay-per-view as the start of the road to WrestleMania, a giant reset for WWE in 2021. That was the plan. Now, obviously right now, I think logistics obviously are an issue. Logistics are an issue, and I understand that considering the manpower and time it would take to pull down the Thunderdome or anything like that. The issue there is that it's never stopped WWE in the past. It's never stopped WWE in the past to doing something like that. They can put up sets like that. They have done it in the past. They have moved into buildings and put sets up in the middle of the night and it not been that long. It's hardly a case of, well, when it comes to WWE, that I don't know if their sets are as extravagant as they once were, if that makes sense. I understand also, I suppose, it's taking that set down and putting another Royal Rumble set up. I get that. That's part of it. But it wouldn't be, look, I think ultimately, it comes down to money. It comes down to money and PR. If WWE truly felt they could make a lot of money by having live fans in attendance in the building, it wouldn't matter about the logistics of taking down the WWE Thunderdome. They'd say, well, there's money to be made, let's go make money. That's what always it comes down to WWE. So I think logistics might be a part of it, but I think money's also a part of it, but they're also PR. I mean, it's hardly safe at the moment to have lots and lots of fans inside an arena, because I don't know, Tropicana Field isn't open air. It's a big stadium, but it's not open air. It's a dome, isn't it? That's an issue. Obviously, the huge capacity, you could absolutely do socially distanced fans there. That wouldn't be a problem. And you could see, I think, was it with the Buffalo Bills or whatever, they had fans in attendance at their NFL game last weekend, and they ensured that everyone coming in had to prove that they could take a negative COVID test before they came in. That could be a scenario there. I think ultimately Vince McMahon hates the idea of having a stadium that's 15, 20, 25% full with socially distanced fans. He hates that image. He hates that look. He thinks that makes WWE look like, oh, they can't sell out the building, or it makes WWE look like the Indies, or it makes WWE look like one of those smaller companies when they try and do a stadium show and they can't sell out. It makes WWE look bad. It doesn't. It really, really doesn't. You're in a pandemic. These are different circumstances at the time. You know, you can't look at it like that. But Vince McMahon was hesitant to even have people surrounding the ring inside the Performance Center because he felt it made WWE look like an independent show. He is that superficial when it comes to the look on television. So I think ultimately there are a few factors in there. Logistics are one. Taking down the Thunderdome for one night, I get that. Also, I think it's money. They realise, you know what, is it worth the money? No. How much money would we make? Not as much as we would want to. And three, I think he also looks at it as to say, look, would it look good on TV having all of these socially distanced fans? I don't think so. So he doesn't want to do it. So I think that's really the issue there. So I guess the next aim is WrestleMania. Can we get fans in attendance for WrestleMania? Certainly not in the capacity that Vince McMahon would want, even in April. And I know that's a while away and anything can and will happen between now and April, especially when it comes to vaccinations, etc. But to me, right now, it just doesn't seem feasible. It just doesn't seem feasible. But as I mentioned, anything can and will happen, I suppose. Let's talk about Raw once again, because there were several WWE superstars that were not used at this week's edition of Monday Night Raw. Now, several WWE superstars were backstage for Raw this week, but they were not used. Now, as noted previously, WWE had multiple superstars pulling double duty on this week's edition of Raw. This included Jeff Hardy, Riddle, Sheamus, and Keith Lee, all working twice. Now, there had been some speculation on WWE being short-handed at Raw this week due to this recent COVID outbreak that is affecting WWE, AEW, and Impact Wrestling right now. WWE Champion Drew McIntyre missed the show physically in person after WWE announced he had tested positive of COVID-19. McIntyre did, though, appear in 2 pre-recorded segments from his home, but he did not appear live. He was replaced by Triple H in the main event against Randy Orton. So rightfully so, people were saying, well, were they down to bare bones when it came to superstars this week at Monday Night Raw? But in an update, PW Insider would report actually that's not the case. That several Raw regulars were backstage this week, but they were just not used. This included Raw Women's Champion Asuka, Raw Tag Team Champions Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander, Ricochet, Nikki Cross. They were among the group of wrestlers at Tropicana Field, but they were just not used for the Raw broadcast. Now, also, the tapings for main event this week featured Slapjack versus Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza versus Akira Tozawa. These wrestlers were also not used on Raw, although Garza did appear on Raw Talk later on in the evening. So it would be a case of, I think some people, rightfully so, thought, well, with this outbreak, I would assume that lots of people weren't available, and lots of people just weren't available or couldn't be used because of these contact tracings or being in quarantining, whatever you want to call it, but not the case. WWE, for whatever reason, decided just to have all these people pull double duty. I don't know what that says about the people that did miss Monday Night Raw. I guess I mentioned one of them was Asuka. I mean, what is happening to the Raw Women's Championship at the moment? It's just disappearing. So very confusing there, very confusing. And if I was one of those people that did miss Raw, but I was backstage and you've got all these people pulling double duty and essentially filling time, I would be having words with people and saying, what, I'm not good enough? I'm not worthy on the show? You can't fit me in? You've got Jeff Hardy being in 2 matches. You've got Keith Lee and Sheamus being in 2 matches. Nothing against them, but the fact that you're having them pull double duty because you need to fill time, to me, just doesn't make any sense. It just seems very, very odd, to say the least. So let's talk about next the Superstar Spectacle, the upcoming Indian special that WWE is set to film. Now, the WWE Superstar Spectacle is actually scheduled to be taped in one day on Thursday, January 21 at the Capitol Wrestling Center inside the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, according to PW Insider. Now, there were plans to tape the show across several days, but it's now expected to be taped on January 21 of 2021, easy for me to say. But there are now conflicting reports. There is a new report from Sports Key that reveals the taping will actually occur inside the WWE Thunderdome, currently stationed at Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg, Florida, and they're also saying that this will take place across several days. So we'll have to wait and see what the case is with that. If I was to lean on one side, I would probably lean to that Sports Key side, because they've been bang on about everything when it comes to this Superstar Spectacle. So I'm very interested. I'm very excited about it. As I mentioned before, the fandom that is in India is absolutely massive, and it's certainly a market that I don't think any pro wrestling company has truly properly hit. But local advertising in India is built around several of WWE's Indian superstars, including Jinder Mahal, the Bollywood Boys, Indus Sher, and Kavita Devi. The show will also feature several of the WWE NXT trainees from India. Now, unless Jinder Mahal makes his WWE TV return before then, the Superstar Spectacles could mark his return to action. The former WWE champion has been out of action since undergoing knee surgery in June 2020. He still remains as a member of the Raw roster. The WWE Superstar Spectacle event will air live in India on Tuesday, January 26 at 8 p.m, which is Indian Republic Day in that country. Now, it's actually expected to last between 90 minutes and 2 hours and will feature both English and Hindi language broadcasts on the Sony 10.1 and Sony 10.3 network. So I'm actually really interested in this. I think this is something that is certainly going to have a lot more details come out in the next few weeks. Obviously, the only real announcement right now is just the name and the event. Obviously, it's going to be taped soon, so I'm sure people will find out more about it then. But I think this is going to be really interesting. As I mentioned before, people really underestimate the fandom in India when it comes to pro wrestling. Obviously, people know about the population. It's a massive market to hit when it comes to merchandising, financial implications, all of that stuff. But I think purely from a pro wrestling fandom element of it, it's way overdue for people to really get good content to that market and specific content to that market. So I'm very excited for it. I really am. I think that's going to be really interesting. We have an update also when it comes to change for the NXT crowd this week. Now, you can expect to see a minor change in the crowd this week for WWE NXT on the USA Network. WWE has been sending out invitations to fans who have previously signed up for the Thunderdome viewing experience, encouraging them to sign up with Wednesday's live NXT taping. This is according to PW Insider. I can confirm this because I also got an email from WWE encouraging me to sign up to NXT. I don't know if this means they're struggling for people to sign up to the Thunderdome. There was a report previously, wasn't there, in the sense that they were using old footage from other WWE Thunderdome shows, putting them on TV for the NXT viewing experience, which seemed very, 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 very strange, didn't it? So this is a different approach for the NXT crowds, as it will be the first time that WWE has used live virtual crowd for the Black and Gold brand since WWE began using the Capitol Wrestling Center for NXT and 205 live shows last year. Fans appearing on the LED screens have been archived footage from the previous Raw, SmackDown and pay-per-view events held in the Thunderdome. So if you can get inside the Capitol Wrestling Center on Wednesday, you can let us know there. So that's certainly interesting that WWE are deciding to change there. WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley has taken to Twitter to give an update on how he's feeling almost 3 weeks after testing positive for COVID-19. Foley noted that he's not feeling too bad, but he's fatigued very easily and his head still is very cloudy. He encouraged fans to wear their mask. He said, quote, "Many of you have been asking how I'm feeling after my positive COVID test. All in all, not too bad, but I get fatigued very easily and my head still feels a little cloudy. Please take this pandemic seriously. The daily death count is staggeringly high and climbing. #mask up, he wrote. Now, Foley revealed back on January 1st he had tested positive for coronavirus. He tested positive after participating in a virtual signing on December 12. As soon as he found out he had been exposed and before the positive test result, he began isolating in a hotel room and was planning to check out on January 4 as he was no longer contagious. Foley later said in a more detailed post that his symptoms were not too serious, just body aches and a headache for for a few days, followed by a loss of smell and hearing issue. So good to hear that Mick Foley is on the mend. Of course, he has tested negative now, but as he mentioned there, you've got to take it seriously. It is real. I know there are people out there that, for whatever reason, don't think that's the case, but it is real, so please take it seriously. But it is glad to see that Mick Foley is on the mend. Erick Rowan has released or revealed the latest tribute to his former tag team partner Brodie Lee, because Erick Rowan took to Twitter yesterday and revealed his new tattoo in memory of his former tag team partner and friend Brodie Lee, also known as John Huber and Luke Harper, of course. The tattoo features a sledgehammer similar to the ones used when Rowan and Harper were the Bludgeon Brothers on WWE television. The hammer includes, I can't even pronounce this, on top of it, there's some name written on it, which is the Old Norse for brother. Now, one fan wondered if this word that was written on it was a misspelling of Brodie, but Erick Rowan's wife, Leah, explained that the word is what the word actually meant rather in a follow-up tweet. It means, as I mentioned, it's also an Old Norse word for brother. So look at that. I mean, fantastic tattoo. If you're a fan of tattoos, obviously, look, I mean, I've got them myself, but it's a very fitting tribute. And speaking of tributes as well, actually, what I do want to touch on while we're talking about Brodie Lee here and Erick Rowan, The New Day revealed on their podcast their latest tribute episode to Brodie Lee. If you haven't watched it or listened to it, go and watch or listen to it. In addition to having all of the members of the New Day, it has Erick Rowan on there, Cesaro, and a bunch of other names on there. It's absolutely spectacular. There's also more tribute footage on the WWE Network that has been released across digital as well. Features Bray Wyatt, Randy Orton, Cesaro, and others. So be sure to check that out as well. It's just, it's still, to me, is absolutely surreal that all of that happened and that is still real. And it almost feels wrong to move on so quickly about it all, but it's crazy. But fantastic tribute by Erick Rowan to his former tag team partner there. We have an update when it comes to NXT superstar Ridge Holland on when he will return to the ring. WWE NXT superstar Ridge Holland recently spoke to Alex McCarthy of TalkSport. Now, these were his first public comments since suffering the leg injuries during the October 7 NXT episode. Holland, who suffered the injuries while catching NXT Tag Team Champion Oney Lorcan, underwent surgery the next day. WWE then announced he had suffered a left ankle dislocation and fracture, and a right knee patella dislocation and a patella tendon rupture. A really horrific injury. If you've seen it, I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. It's a horrible, horrible injury. The knee dislocation was put right back into place at ringside, and the ankle dislocation was put back into place at the emergency room, according to WWE's announcement at the time. Now, Holland reportedly began inpatient rehab on both of his legs the following week. Holland then told TalkSport that the rehab is going well for the pretty freak incident, and he's still on the road to recovery. This is what he said, quote, "Pretty freak incident. On my left leg, I fractured and dislocated my ankle, and then on my right leg, I dislocated the kneecap and ruptured my patella tendons. Kind of a buy one get one free on injuries, but it's coming on well. The WWE medical staff are top notch and they've got me well on the road to recovery." Now, Holland still doesn't really have a timetable on if or when he'll return to action in the ring, but he said he was told 6 to 9 months when he underwent the surgery. He was asked about when he will return. He said, quote, "It is early days yet, but the doctor has said 6 to 9 months, so I'm just taking it day by day and seeing how the knee and ankle feels. If I look too far in the future, I'll probably take my focus on what needs to be done today. So yeah, we'll see how it goes." So hopefully he can return soon. It really was a brutal and horrific injury, and it was such a shame because this is a guy that, yes, he was green in the ring, but he had a fantastic look, a fantastic gimmick, and he really was on an upward trajectory path. I mean, he really is a talent with so much promise and hype, and I'm not just saying that as a fellow Brit. He really is something very, very special for the future. I know Triple H and everyone at NXT has very high expectations for him and high goals for him, so hopefully he can return soon, but it was a really horrific injury, so glad to hear that he is on the road to recovery. Speaking of injuries as well, Kofi Kingston has confirmed the recent jaw injury that was announced by WWE. Kofi Kingston has confirmed he's suffering with a jaw injury currently. As noted, WWE announced on Monday's edition of Raw that Kingston was not part of the match or show due to a broken jaw. Xavier Woods came to ringside for a loss to T-Bar, and the announcers noted that Kingston is currently on the shelf. It was later confirmed that the jaw injury is legitimate, but it could not be confirmed if Kofi actually does have a broken jaw, but he does have an injury of some sort. Now, Kingston took to Instagram TV this week to interview Major League Rugby player Tandai Matawira and confirmed an injury to his jaw before their discussion began. He said, quote, "I gotta apologize because I feel like I'm talking out of the side of my mouth and I'm dealing with like a jaw injury right now and my mouth is only closing on one side. So if I sound kind of funny, that's why. Ordinarily, I do a lot of imitations, impersonations and impressions, but I'm not doing that right now. I'm talking funny to figure this situation out." So it would appear that the injury is legitimate to Kofi Kingston. We don't know if it is a broken jaw. The fact that his jaw isn't closing on one side does seem pretty serious, so hopefully he can return soon. But what a horrible injury. I guess this is what happens when you're a pro wrestler. It's not ballet, as they would say. But hopefully Kingston can return soon, but that does sound like a horrible injury, doesn't it? We have some update when it comes to WrestleMania 24 on the WWE Network too. Now, the WrestleMania 24 pay-per-view has returned to the WWE Network. The event was removed over the weekend, reportedly due to a musical rights issue related to the music that Floyd Mayweather used for his entrance in his match against The Big Show. Now, PW Insider has noted that other programming from that time period in 2008 featuring the same music may also be pulled and re-edited. WrestleMania 24, of course, saw Mayweather defeat The Big Show in a no disqualification match. Now, at the event at WrestleMania 24, Mayweather came to the ring using his Yep single, a song that Mayweather later won a copyright infringement suit over, brought by rapper Anthony Lawrence Dash. The new upload, though, features Mayweather coming to the ring with a generic hip-hop track. So like many people speculated, the reason it was pulled and re-edited was a music rights issue. So I would assume, like they mentioned by PW Insider, that after WrestleMania was pulled and re-edited, probably those episodes of Monday Night Raw where Mayweather appeared will also be pulled and re-edited. It's frustrating whenever that is the case, because a lot of the times it's so frustrating, isn't it, when you hear like Hulk Hogan whenever he comes to the ring and it should be Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix and it's this generic air guitar stuff put over the top of it. It's really annoying, but that's copyright, I guess, and it's certainly something WWE doesn't have to deal with now because they've learned their lesson time and time and time again. Personally, I wish they would just pay the rights, but that's WWE, isn't it? That's the penny-pinching WWE. And finally, we have an update when it comes to Jeff Jarrett and this lawsuit with Anthem, because WWE Hall of Famer and his Global Force Entertainment have settled the lawsuit with Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions, which is the parent company of Impact Wrestling. Now, the motion was filed before the United States Court Middle District of Tennessee on Friday, according to PW Insider. It was entered into court records this week. The settlement comes after a new trial was denied following the previous mistrial. The two sides came to a settlement, as the court suggested. Jarrett originally filed the lawsuit against Anthem in August 2018, shortly after his departure from the company. Jarrett filed the lawsuit for copyright infringement over the rights to his Global Force Wrestling, alleging that Impact had used the footage without his permission. The case faced several delays, including the death of a judge and the COVID-19 pandemic, among other issues that led to the mistrial back in July 2020. So thankfully, this issue is done, because, I mean, this has been raging for 3 years at this point, maybe even longer, and I think most people, probably Jeff Jarrett and Anthem, just went, can we just get this over with? So it looks like they've settled out of court. We don't know the terms of the settlement, but it's over. It's finally over. Jeff Jarrett is now with WWE, works as a producer. Anthem are doing great things with Impact Wrestling. Both sides can split and they can move on, and I think that's what all the fans want to see as well. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So get involved with the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.